Okay, you can count to 5.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Marla McGinnis, and I will be your moderator for today's media availability. Joining us today are Jason Mew with Nova Scotia's Emergency Management Office, Bob Robichaud, Warning Preparedness Meteorologist with the Canadian Hurricane Centre, Matt Drover with Nova Scotia Power, Christina LeMay with Cape Breton Regional Municipality, Ansel Langell, Canadian Red Cross, and Erica Fleck, Assistant Chief Emergency Management with Halifax Regional Fire Emergency. Mr. Mew will start us off now with some opening remarks before we take some questions from media. Go ahead, Mr. Mew.
Sure, thank you very much. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to participate in this briefing. Like we all know, Hurricane Fiona is definitely headed our way, and we're looking for some really significant impacts to Nova Scotia and obviously other provinces such as PEI as well, in New Brunswick and parts of Newfoundland. But we're definitely going to get hit hard. It's going to be quite a large storm. And what we're just asking all Nova Scotians to be safe, make sure they have a 72-hour preparedness kit, make sure they check on their neighbors. And what we're doing here at the Nova Scotia EMO is we've activated our Provincial Coordination Center with all our key partners. Some of them you see here on the screen, and we're looking forward to sharing some information with you today.
Thank you very much. So we'll now take questions from media. I'll call upon each reporter. When I call your name, please just identify who your question is for so they can prepare to answer it. We're going to start off first with Jean Laroche of CBC News. Go ahead, Jean.
Thanks, Marla. I'm just wondering, my question is for Mr. Drover at Nova Scotia Power. I was just in a media availability with Mr. Robichaud at Environment Canada. And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, the message I got is this one will pack the punch of Juan, but it'll be the size of Dorian. In light of that, Mr. Drover, what does your modeling say about the extent of outages that people should expect here in Nova Scotia?
We're definitely seeing the same thing as Mr. Robichaud. We're expecting a significant storm, and that's what we're preparing for. We've opened our emergency operations center. We have our crews being staged through the province, all in anticipation of a very serious major storm.
John, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, that didn't quite get at it. Can you talk to me about what your modeling is showing, and when it comes to restoration of time, given the fact, as Mr. Robichaud mentioned in his briefing, this storm is expected to linger a good 12 hours. It's not going to be in and out. How long should people expect to be without power once they're out? And what is your priority in terms of getting people back on the grid?
It's very difficult to say at this point how long the outages will occur for, but rest assured we are doing everything we can to get people staged around the province to restore power as quickly as possible. The big thing that we will be doing after the storm has hit is getting our crews out to assess the damage that has occurred and updating any restoration times at that moment. So really it's getting the crews out in the field to understand the level of damage. It could be a Dorian level event, and that's what we're planning for.
Could you deal with the second part of that question, which is what is your priority in terms of restoring power?
Absolutely. So sorry, I missed the second part, but our focus really is on any wires down calls, any emergencies that come in. And then we'll be focusing on our transmission system, working very closely with EMO and working to make sure that once the transmission system is restored, to focus on hospitals and public health areas like that. And then we'll get into communities and sub-communities from there and individual houses at the end of the restoration.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Jesse Thomas with CTV. Go ahead, Jesse.
Great, thanks. My question is for Nova Scotia Power again. Looking across the province, I'm wondering, are most hydro cables, are they all above ground? Is there any places that might be safe in terms of maybe they have underground hydro? Could you maybe just give me an idea of the landscape in terms of the infrastructure?
The majority of the infrastructure in Nova Scotia is above ground. We have over 500,000 poles throughout the province. We do in urban areas have underground systems as well, but the majority of the province does have overhead infrastructure.
Jesse, do you have a follow-up question?
Thanks for that information. I appreciate the numbers on the amount of poles out there. I know yesterday we talked about challenges with the leaves on the trees in that state. But this might seem, and I don't need to sound facetious, I'm just wondering, why aren't there more, given the hurricanes we see, why aren't there more hydro poles or hydro running underground?
So there are a few reasons for that. We do work very closely with municipalities and developers to install underground systems when that makes sense. Economically, it does cost significantly more, especially in the province of Nova Scotia, where there is a significant amount of rock in the ground. It is costly to install below ground lines. And when outages do occur, so underground systems aren't outage free. When there are issues with those systems, it can sometimes take much longer to restore those outages. It takes a while to find where the problem is. So where it makes sense, we definitely are installing underground as well.
Next, we'll go to Jen Taplin with the Chronicle Herald. Go ahead, Jen.
So I guess this question is probably best for Erica. Just wondering at the difference between evacuation centers, emergency shelters, and comfort centers. What can be found inside, and can homeless folks, for example, go to any of those, that kind of thing?
Okay, thanks very much. So the evacuation centers by legislation, the municipality has to request through the province, and the province has the Red Cross on contract for that. So we are not allowed to open overnight or operate overnight shelters. So the evacuation centers and emergency centers are exactly the same thing. It's just the lingo. But what that is an overnight capacity for people to be able to sleep or evacuate to in need of emergency, or as we mentioned earlier, if they want to pre-evacuate if they feel unsafe with the weather coming in around their residence. Comfort centers will be set up by the municipality after the storm passes, and they will be in various locations throughout HRM once we do the assessment after the storm, when it's safe for people to come out. And we'll send out volunteers so people can drop in, get some food, charge their phone, receive information, and all of that. At the overnight shelters, there will be food, a place to sleep with cot blankets, pillows, things like that. For the two specific sites set up for the homeless population, we'd prefer if they go there simply because we have additional services provided to best suit their needs, but there's certainly they can show up at any shelter in times of need. And then we also have our ground search and rescue crews from Halifax going out tonight to check all the encampments and pick them up if they decide to go later on. We will drive them to one of those two shelters.
Jen, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, sorry, I'm not sure who this is best for, but are any areas being blocked off, dangerous spots like Peggy's Cove, maybe waterfronts, that kind of thing? Is any areas like that being blocked off?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for asking that. We've been working with Develop Nova Scotia, specifically for those two spots that you've mentioned. So both the Boardwalk in Halifax and the Peggy's Cove area will be barricaded off later on today. And we are reminding residents and asking them not to go there. And again, to the Lawrencetown area where the waves and the wave watchers tend to come out. It will be really unsafe, as well as any area near the water. We would really prefer people to stay inside and be safe. Thank you very much for asking that.
Those are all the registered reporters we have on the line today. So I'm going to just circle back to each one and see if you have any additional questions. So we'll start with Jean LaRoche with CBC. Jean, do you have any additional questions?
Absolutely. Thank you, Marla. This is for Bruce McDonald up Cape Breton. Yesterday, speaking to your mayor, Amanda McDougall, she talked about some unsafe homes or areas of the municipality, and that there was an attempt to open up, she suggested perhaps Center 200 as some sort of evacuation center. Can you bring us up to date on what's happening on that score?
Hi, Jean. It's actually Christina Lamy here on the line. Bruce was unable to come on the call at this time. I do have an update in regards to that, though. We believe we're going to be able to open Center 200 this evening, specifically for residents who may feel unsafe in the storm from down on that southern coast of our regional municipality, which is down in the Gabaroos type geography down in that direction. We also, of course, in downtown Sydney, the homeless shelter on Townsend Street is open with emergency capacity there as well. So for those who are unhoused, that's where we would ideally direct those residents to go. And the shelter that we're working on right now for Center 200 is specifically not unlike what Halifax suggested there, that if residents feel unsafe in the dwelling that they're in the storm surge zone, that space will be available later on tonight.
And Christina, how would you expect those people to get there?
That is a detail I don't have fully expected at the moment, but self-driving would be welcome as well. And I think our transit system is looking at some assistance as well. But ultimately, if people could come with their own supplies as much as possible, that would be good.
And just to finish the loop on this one, when will that be open?
Not sure about the time just yet. I think 8 p.m. is being the target time.
Okay, next we'll go to Jesse Thomas. Jesse, any additional questions for you?
Great, thanks so much. I'm wondering with regards to, do we have a plan or any lists available that we can direct people to at this time?
Sorry, was that question for Cape Breton Regional Municipality?
Yeah, both CBRM and HRM, thank you.
So I believe that Halifax is the same, but the comfort centers, we do know the locations that we plan to open. The locations of those will be made available as soon as it's safe to travel to them. So that's an announcement that'll be coming later on after the main impact of the storm is passed. We, number one, want people to not travel during the impact times during the event itself.
Ms. Fleck, do you have anything to add to that?
No, it's the exact same for HRM.
Perfect. Next, we'll go to Jen Taplin with the Herald. Jen, do you have any additional questions?
I have two, and they're unrelated. So the first is, this is being called by, I've seen a lot of American news agencies and such calling it a superstorm, Canada's Superstorm Sandy. And I was just wondering, maybe for Mr. Robichaud to speak on that. Is that like the two storms merging, calling it a superstorm and that kind of thing? Is that kind of thing accurate to say, and being such an historic storm that's broken?
Yeah, I mean, it is comparable because we have these two features kind of merging. One is feeding the other. If we were looking at just the tropical system arriving without that trough of low pressure that we're seeing now and that cold air to the north, you'd probably see a lot faster weakening of the storm. But the fact that the trough is there and it's arriving right at the same time that the tropical system is coming up, it actually speeds up the process to transform it to what we call a post-tropical storm. Which is what Sandy was, and when it just before it became post-tropical, just before making landfall. And what these things tend to do, they tend to grow in size tremendously, which is again what Fiona is doing as well. Now, Sandy actually was larger than Fiona is expected to be, even so. But the process is essentially the same, where you have two features kind of feeding off each other to create one strong storm, like we're going to see overnight tonight and into tomorrow.
Great, thank you. And I'm not really sure who to direct this to, and maybe Jason, but I'm seeing a lot of people online concerned, like very anxious, of course, and a lot of kids being very scared and worried going through this. So I just wondered if there's any advice or reassurance, that kind of thing, that might be helpful for folks who are really struggling with the storm approaching.
So I guess for those that are struggling with looking for information, obviously following, media and you can always talk to your neighbors or reaching out to someone to have a discussion if you're really, nervous about something. But there's a lot of good information there. Environment Climate Change Canada has been relaying a lot of the information regarding the storm. It is going to be a large storm. I mean, myself, I have two children at home, and it's a discussion we have that we're expecting a large storm overnight, and just to make necessary, have necessary discussions and just try to, I guess, give them as much information as you can so they feel a little bit safer, I guess, in the house or in their apartment or wherever they are when the storm's going to hit. But like Bob was saying, it's going to be a very large storm, a strong winds, lots of rain, storm surge. So it is very much a significant event. And there will be a lot of people that are worried, but we're really asking those to stay off the roads if they can, and let the first responders and power companies do the work that needs to be done to make it safe again.
Great. I'll circle through the reporters one last time. Jean Laroche with CBC, anything more from you?
Jason, I just want to pick up on your last point. Given the fact that this is going to be a long storm where there was going to be very high winds, sustained winds for a long time, how will that hamper emergency crews who have to respond to whatever calls come in?
So all first responders, and I know Nova Scotia Power can speak to this, there are certain wind speeds and safe work practices that you have to adhere to. So obviously you can't have linesmen and other first responders out when it's blowing over, certain professions, it might be over 80 kilometers an hour. Certain others might be a little bit higher, it might be a little bit lower, but that's really up to the department and the agencies to put together those safe work practices. We don't want to cause anyone to be injured or lose their life by trying to respond when it's unsafe to do so.
Over to you, Mr. Drover.
So just to echo what Jason said, safety is our #1 priority at Nova Scotia Power. We do everything we can to make sure that we're restoring power as safely as possible. So when the winds do get above 80, we will stand the buckets down. We can still go out and do assessments of what the damage may be, but we won't actually be able to get the buckets up in the air until the winds get below 80. We'll be watching that very closely, and as soon as the winds are below, we'll get the buckets up in the air and restore power as quickly as possible.
Given the
forecast,
go ahead.
To say the other thing to keep in mind from a safety perspective is wires down. If you see wires down, do not go anywhere near them, and report those in as quickly as you can, and we'll get people out there right away.
Given the forecast, though, and the fact that we're going to have long sustained winds for a long time, what's that likely to do to people who are out of power and want it restored?
We definitely understand the urgency that people want their power restored. We want to make sure that we can power back on as quickly as possible. So we will have those crews at the ready. They'll be on standby, ready to go. As soon as it is safe to do so, we'll get out and restore the power as quickly as possible.
No, I understand all that, but is it likely to take longer than both Juan and Dorian, given the fact this is going to stick around for about 12 hours?
It's a great point, and we would have had similar protocols in place for Dorian and Juan. We would have stood crews down. So as soon as those winds are below, it definitely will make the restoration longer. We're waiting for the winds to be below 80, but as soon as they are, we will get out at that point.
Okay, Jesse Thomas, anything more from you?
Great, thanks. Just to follow up to yesterday's comments about maybe emergency supports, or even when it comes to line supports. I heard roughly Nova Scotia Power has 800 crew that will be positioned around the province. But I'm wondering, do we have other supports on standby? And that could be from power, maybe to other emergency supports, like I'm wondering the military.
So I guess I can speak to the military. We have been in contact with the Canadian Armed Forces for the last week, and they have been making preparations. We haven't pulled the trigger yet as far as requesting their official assistance, but it's certainly something that we'll be looking at closely once the impacts hit Nova Scotia.
Okay, and Jen Taplin, anything more from you?
I was hoping to hear from Nova Scotia Power as well.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So as of right now, we do have over 800 people in the field right now getting ready to restore power, and hundreds more behind the scenes coordinating that effort. In addition to that, we have reached out to our partners in Ontario, Quebec, all of Atlantic Canada, and Maine to have other contractors available if we do need to bring them in as well.
Okay, great. We'll move to Jen Taplin now with the Chronicle Herald. Jen, anything more from you?
I think I'm good, but I was just curious that does the fact that it's kind of a lot of this is happening overnight, nighttime hours, does that make repairs more difficult?
Anyone you'd like to direct that question to specifically?
Oh, sorry. I guess that would be Matt.
Yeah, so we actually have crews working 24 hours a day. We have crews working at night as well. Most of our restoration does get done during daylight hours. That's when we'll have most people on the ground, but we do have crews working around the clock restoring power as well.
Okay, great. That's all the time we have today. Thank you everyone for joining us and stay safe. We'll see you again next time.